Hi, and welcome back to the Convergently Speaking podcast. Good to have you here. Today I want to look at the topic of systems thinking and systems in general as a whole. The reason I want to talk about this is that I think it's a topic that doesn't get enough attention, and yet it's something that impacts us every day. We all exist in multiple interrelated systems. We all exist within many different systems that are running, and all these systems have different and varying degrees of impact on our life. What do I mean by this? Well, probably the easiest example is to think of the social system of our family system. Everyone knows that when you go along to different family holidays and all the extended family get together, there's a type of flavor to that experience, can be good, can be bad, that when that particular mix of people get into the room, there's certain things that are likely to occur. There's certain arguments or tensions or certain behaviors that time and time again occur. Those people in a room create a particular system. There's a particular interaction between all those people and their personalities that creates what within systems thinking is referred to as an emergent, something that emerges from that mix of people being together. Now, if you take out one or two provocative members of that family, you're probably aware, that person doesn't come along for some reason. You've probably observed that the emergent is different. You tweak one part of that system and you can get a radically different outcome. Even just one person in a large family, if they're, a significant personality in the family, can totally change the whole dynamics. I was tempted doing this podcast to lay out a really clear structure and almost switch into a teaching education bit of content on systems thinking. But I'm no expert on the topic, and that's not the motivator behind wanting to do this podcast. What I want to do is I want to, lay out a bit of information and examples to help you understand what systems are and how they operate, and what systems thinking in terms of the way we ourselves operate cognitively, how that's relevant to today's society, maybe more than ever. Because as I said, I don't think it's something that is well understood, and it's certainly not something that gets much airtime. And yet, most of the topics that we continue to have come up in public discourse, there's many systems components to these that need to be thought of and addressed. So the idea of systems or systems thinking is that whenever there's an emergent or whenever there's something that comes to be, for a systems thinker, rather than saying, for example, my great uncle acted like a dick at the family thing the other day because, he's just a terrible person. Systems thinking will say, well, what factors were in place that caused my uncle to, act like a dick, to be rude or whatever? And it will start to look at all the or a systems thinking approach will look at all the possible contributing factors. So maybe your uncle has a strained relationship with his brother. And when he was growing up, his brother would bully him. His brother would always steal the limelight. And there was this competitive dynamic between those two. And so in your uncle acting like a dick, it was actually his way of attempting to get attention, maybe still competing, following old patterns of competing with his brother. And maybe that's the way that he learnt to be seen by his mother or his father. And so there's a history there. Or maybe he is not very tolerant of the heat and it's a hot day. The air conditioning's not working. And so when he gets hot, he gets more short-tempered and he gets, more flustered by the heat, and he can't regulate his emotions as well. Or maybe he's a diabetic and his blood sugars drop. And so he's not fully in control of his ability to regulate his emotions. Now, these are all individual examples, but if we're thinking about systems thinking, then we start to realize that it's likely not just one of these things. It could be a tense relationship with his brother, in addition to having low blood sugar, in addition to it being a hot day. That combination of those three factors has contributed to him acting like a dick. So it's not that he is fundamentally a dick. He's not fundamentally a bad person. It's that there was a number of factors that were present that created that emergent. So the reason that I think systems thinking is particularly relevant, and it's something that I keep consciously and I think even unconsciously in mind when analyzing anything, is that in a soundbite culture, which we've come to accept as quite normal because of short form media and news and that kind of thing, and even social media, there's this temptation to take the easy route when thinking through issues, to convince ourselves that these complex issues are simple, that these complex issues can all be attributed to one or two causes. I mean, I say one or two. In most cases, the temptation is to attribute a bad or a good thing to one cause. So your uncle acts like a dick. It's because he's a dick. It's hard work trying to work out what other factors might have been at play. Well, the economy's gone down the drain. Well, it's the Prime Minister. It's the President. Donald Trump. He's to blame. We've got to say, hold on, what's going on here? How is it that Donald Trump got into power? It's a very odd and unique situation for this man to get into the position of power that he did. And I can tell you that there are a lot of complex, interrelating systems that were running to create the emergent that Donald Trump got voted in. We can't blame all the world's ills, or even all of America's ills, on Trump. Love him or hate him. A lot of people love him and they try and say that everything that's good in America comes from him. But in the story of American history, he's a blip in the timeline. Now, I'm talking about systems thinking, which is a specific theory. It's a specific term that relates to a specific theory. But in my own mind, I think of systems, or I think of a matrix, and often I'm visualized like a matrix or a web. There's all these words that kind of can be visually representative of a way of thinking or a way things operate that's more than just a linear A, B, C, D, E. This web, complex web. And there's all these different factors and contributing nodes, contributing pieces within the system, within a system. Another good example where I see systems thinking lacking, and really an acknowledgement of the complex range of variables at work, is the human person. We're still unclear as to all the aspects that exist of the human person. Some say it's mind, body, soul. Some say it's mind, body, soul, spirit. Others talk about there being chakras and other layers of consciousness and awareness that are present for every human person. Others say no, it's entirely material. But without going down that rabbit hole, we only need to look at the areas that we agree upon. We have a heart, we have lungs, we have skin, we have all manner of different biological systems that are running internally. And these are all really complex pieces of the human person, all on their own, which is why there's specializations that doctors spend many years studying and learning about, and then may spend their entire career working on just this one area. There's podiatrists that literally specialize in the foot, the feet, or cardiologists that, exclusively work in the areas of the heart. And what I think this has done, the acknowledgement of the depth of complexity of these individual pieces has taken away from, it's like we've almost forgotten to acknowledge and remember that all these pieces make up a larger whole. And if we're not going to consider all these individual parts' role in this larger whole, we're always going to miss a big portion of truth and ultimately lack in our capacity to understand the human person. So I often find it really intriguing when someone will talk about, a study that's examining a particular herb or a particular drug or medicine, which says, oh, well, we've studied this medicine and we know there are, these side effects, and we know there are these benefits, and we know that these side effects are limited, or, any kind of absolute statements that are made. And whilst I totally believe that high quality, rigorous scientific studies can, gain clarity about what, say, for example, taking turmeric every day can do for levels of inflammation in the body and someone's overall pain and that kind of thing, I think we're kidding ourselves if we believe that one study or a number of studies can actually conclusively define all the impact, every impact that taking and using turmeric could have. You change one piece of a system and it can affect, doesn't necessarily affect, but it can affect all the other pieces or a good portion of the pieces of that system. You start exercising and it can have all manner of positive impacts on one's health. Some we know, and I'm sure many we don't know and understand. And so whilst I think that we should and we must continue to rigorously study, herbs and how they impact the body and all different medicines and all different lifestyle changes that can be done, I think we need to really consciously resist the urge to lock away these conclusions, to simplify or take a really reductive approach to understanding what any particular medical intervention can do, both for good or for bad. The thing about systems is that they're inherently complicated. And the thing about human brains is that we like to take cognitive shortcuts. We like to make leaps. We're not robots. We're not a machine. Even the smartest, most cognitively trained in logical thinking still ultimately thinks in very non-linear, irrational at times ways, with emotions and other things impacting on their thinking. So we need to resist the urge to use cause and effect thinking. There's really nothing that happens that's only caused by one thing. There's always a number of contributing factors. Now, another really controversial but pertinent example on this topic is the environment. And to be honest, I almost don't know where to start. The environment is such a complex system of interrelating parts. We literally refer to the ecosystem. And we know that if you remove a particular species, animal species or plant species from a particular ecosystem, that it can have and often does have untold effects. As humans, we've messed with the ecosystem and continue to do. Thinking, with a sort of a hubris that we can just remove or introduce this animal because we don't like it and all will be well. And then, 10, 20, 30 years down the line, we start to realize the impact of this decision. So when it comes to issues of the environment, I personally get quite frustrated by the dialogue, because there are those that believe climate change is real, It's man-made. We totally understand how it's been created and the impact it's going to have, and we can predict, to the year when the impacts of climate change are going to be catastrophic and make human existence on this planet untenable. And then there's those that on the other side that are absolutely convinced that it's not happening, or if they are, that we didn't create it and we can't control it, and that there's no problem, and people are just being dramatic and overstating things. The truth is that 99.9% of people that engage on this topic aren't really informed or aware enough of all the factors that are contributing to actually make an informed decision. Climate scientists not only are more informed, for example, on this topic, they have access to computer models, highly complex computer models that have been mapping and tracking all manner of aspects of the climate and environmental ecosystems and all that kind of thing. So they're not keeping all that data in their head. Now, they have a level of skill to interpret that data, but the complexity of a system like the planet's ecosystem is beyond any one person's cognitive capacity, cognitive ability. And so not only should climate scientists have a level of humility and skepticism of their models, which I think many of them probably do, because they understand the inherent complexity of what they're looking at and dealing with. But any of us that are talking about the topic should have a level of humility as well. Like any complex system, the Earth's climate is no different. There are so many complex variables that are at play, many of which we may not even know or fully understand, that it's difficult to project and fully understand what's going on. So even if climate change is a real thing and it's a thing that's been created by, human activity, anthropogenic climate change, the suggestion that we can nail exactly what's going on and how it's going to impact us is one that I think was a bit naive and ultimately arrogant. And where I think all this leads ultimately is important, big issues end up becoming polarized because people on both sides, and I say both sides, but because people take one of two sides of an argument and give into and buy into the belief that these complex issues, these hot button issues can have simple and easy explanations, and that half of the population at any one time that disagrees with them are just stupid, are just idiots, are just wrong. When the fact of the matter is, usually both sides of any argument have a good portion of truth, and yet neither holds all of the truth of any one issue. So it really concerns me that so many issues have become polarized, and that instead of people genuinely seeking truth and getting to the heart of these really important issues, they end up just letting their egos get wrapped up in their particular position and shutting down and closing down to hear any other opposing or alternative point of view. Maybe just an alternative point of view, but they see it as adversarial. They feel like they're under attack. And I say they, I do this. We all do this. We let our egos get wrapped up in different ideas and beliefs that we have about the world. But I think if we're going to continue as a species and we're going to live well in harmony with not just other humans, but all living species on the planet, we need to start acknowledging that these issues that we have and have been here for many years can't be reduced into simplistic one-line news article headlines. There are complex systems that have been at work for many, many years to create the emergence the emergence that we see. And, we're going to have to come up with complex solutions to wind back these systems or change these systems if we don't want to continue to have the same emergence. So that's about all I have for you today. This is a complex topic and not an easy one to put into words, but I think it really gets to the heart of a lot of what I wanted this podcast to be about when I came up with the name Convergently Speaking. Because what I was wanting to get at with this name is point at the larger truth that there is an interrelatedness and an interconnectedness of all things. Despite the fact you or I might feel like we're an individual walking around on this earth on our own, it's just not true. We breathe the same air, and we share microorganisms, and there is a connectedness and an interrelatedness that I think often we forget is there. So if I can leave you with one thing, it's simply to allow yourself to consider what other factors may be at play when you're having a negative encounter with someone, or when you're having an encounter with someone that you deem to be negative and you want to just write them off as stupid or dumb or the reverse, when you have an encounter with someone and they seem so much better than you, so much more skilled or gifted than you, or to just have special luck and you never have it. Allow yourself to start to think, what else could be contributing? What else might be going on here that I'm not privy to, that I can't see? Take a few seconds longer before making your judgment, and sort of just hold that open for a moment and think, what else am I not seeing? Because I think if we can all hold space for one another more like this, we will actually diffuse a lot of the tensions and issues and conflicts that we're seeing so prevalent these days, and start to wind back this polarization, which seems to be leaking into more and more topics as the years go on. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time on the Convergently Speaking podcast. Have a good day.